Will you pray with me? Gracious God, may the words of my mouth and the meditation of all of our hearts be acceptable to you, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. So they went out and fled from the tomb, for terror and amazement had seized them, and they said nothing to anyone, for they were afraid. That's one heck of an ending for an Easter gospel, isn't it? Rather anticlimactic, don't you think? Where is the rock-shaking earthquake, the dazzling angel standing guard? Where's the mysterious gardener appearing to Mary, or the stranger suddenly there on the Emmaus road? Friends, let's just name the elephant in the tomb. Where the heck is Jesus? It is Easter, for goodness sake. Now, we know that Mark's gospel has always been a bit spare, but this feels extreme. For this isn't just where the Easter story ends for Mark, it's where he ends the entire gospel. The women were terrified, so they ran away and said nothing to anyone. The end. Now, in full disclosure, there are translations that have a few extra verses tacked on that show encounters with the risen Christ. But scholars tell us they are much later additions, written no doubt because Mark's ending is just so unnerving. And given that we are here, 2,000 years later on this Easter morning, it's also clearly incomplete. For obviously someone told someone, who told someone, who told someone, and that is why we are telling it now. But just as we might long for one of those more spectacular bells and whistle resurrection stories that we do find in the other Gospels, Mark's may just be the one that we need to hear this morning. For so many reasons, Easter might feel a little off to us this season. First of all, it came very early. And even though the leaves are barely in bud and we have gotten a reprieve on this Easter morning with the weather, don't look ahead to next week, the mornings are still pretty dark and cold. And many of us, and probably not those of you here in worship leadership, but many of us were not quite ready for Easter to happen yet. I kept hearing, wait, what, it's this Sunday? We've barely put away our Christmas decorations. But it's more than just the timing or the temperature that might feel off. Many of us struggle to find the glory and hallelujah of the season when our world is filled with such uncertainty and violence and sorrow. Mass shootings and escalating wars, children starving in Gaza and Sudan and Haiti, a climate spinning out of control, and a political landscape that fills us with dread. And it's not just the world out there, it's the world in here, too. Despite all that we have to be thankful for in our lives, so many of us are increasingly isolated and anxious and angry and depressed. Social media and tech addiction have warped our self-worth and eroded our sense of community. We've lost trust in one another, and when trust is gone, fear swoops in. For many folks close to home and around the globe, the world feels like a frightening place. So if we come here hoping to celebrate love's victory over fear and life's victory over death, it's understandable that we might just be looking for a little proof of all that. And that's why I think Mark's strange gospel has a word for us. Because Mark knows a little something about what it means to live in a world defined by fear, a world in short supply of happy endings. From the moment we turned our backs on the Garden of Eden and stepped out into this unwieldy garden, the human condition has been a mix of heartbreak and goodness, beauty and danger, the promise of life and the certainty of death. And And so this is where we stand today, in the chaotic mix of it all, which quite frankly is right where we should be, even on Easter morning. Because if this resurrection story is going to speak to us, it can't ignore the world we live in. God certainly doesn't. God places this story right in the middle of fear and death and chaos, because that's when we need to hear it most. For the women who came to the tomb that morning, their lives had been shaped by fear, and their last 48 hours had been defined by death. The empire made sure of that. With its violence and brutality, it made sure that Jesus' radical, life-giving message of love and hope was crucified right along with him. That was the whole point. And as the women stood at the foot of the cross, dumbstruck and grief-stricken, it was clear to them that death had won, just like it always does. It's how the world works. So what else were they to think on that early Sunday morning, carrying their spices to bury their friend? Death was all they were expecting, and so as they peered inside the tomb, death was what they saw. They don't see an angel waiting inside. They only see a young man. They don't see the risen Christ transformed in front of them, just a heap of cloth on the floor. They don't hear glory, alleluia, just a strange message. Don't be alarmed, the young man says. Jesus has risen and is waiting for you just as he promised. But through the eyes of fear, none of these words make sense. And even those of us who know the rest of the story, we are left wondering if that's all there is. And that, I believe, is the genius of Mark's gospel. Instead of rushing to the miraculous good news and the happy technicolor ending of the resurrection glory, he first asks us, how do we recognize the resurrection in a world defined by fear? How do we find the risen Christ when all we can see is an empty tomb? As the Reverend Timothy Atkins Jones tells us, like those women, we come with the expectation of death in the dying world all around us. And then we receive only a word about resurrection. Just a word. God always seems to do things the hard way. I mean, the women saw Jesus suffer and die. That was real. Why doesn't God allow them to come to the tomb and watch Jesus walk out into the light of a new day? Wouldn't it be easier for us if we could see Jesus simply appear? But no, we come to Easter morning with the same things these women had. A mere word about resurrection that flies in the face of everything we know to be true. But what if? What if this word is not just a word? What if it is a promise? And what if it's not only okay to be unsettled by it, but that unsettling us is the whole point? For what could be more unsettling and hopeful than to realize that the single most constant reality of life, death, is no longer a constant? That all we thought about how the world works could be turned on its head. Wouldn't the only response be silence and trembling? Perhaps the miracle of the resurrection is not supposed to hit us all at once. It's too inconceivable. But instead, to point us to a direction beyond the emptiness. To start us on a path of seeking the risen Christ, so that in the seeking, we can learn to see differently and live differently. Perhaps for Mark's community, who were surrounded by war and death and destruction, Jesus' promise that love will conquer fear and life will come out of death was enough miracle to hold on to. After all, they'd seen him do it in life, healing the sick, feeding the hungry, raising the dead, creating a feast for thousands out of crumbs, making the blind see and the lame walk, changing a skeptical, clueless band of misfits into a beloved community that changed the world. But this resurrection vision, it doesn't hit them all at once. It's hard to see in the moment. They are too scared. But then they see. In his life, Jesus had already begun breaking the pattern of violence and fear. Why should death stop it now? And if the pattern of death has been disrupted, then anything is possible. And because we know the rest of the story, because we are the rest of the story, we know that by the time those frightened women make it back to the upper room, they are bursting to shout out the good news. Christ is risen.
Christ is risen indeed.
Whether you hold the risen Christ as literal and bodily, or as metaphorical and spiritual, to encounter him is to be changed forever. And we do encounter him. We can recognize him even in a world of fear. For the resurrection pattern is all around us, right in front of us, often hiding in plain sight. When a body once devastated by chemotherapy begins to heal and grow strong, when a river once poisoned by toxic waste teems again with life, when nations who have been at war with each other for generations come to the table to talk, when a relationship we thought was dead is rekindled by an unexpected touch, when the chains of anger and guilt are unlocked by a word of forgiveness, when a heart filled with grief is once again able to laugh, then we are pointed toward resurrection. This messy, mixed up human world that we have been given, that we live out every day, it's not only a place of chaos and anxiety and, yes, death. It is also a place imprinted with the pattern of resurrection. It's just that, like in the empty tomb, God sometimes keeps it subtle. Sometimes resurrection has to grow on us. For the irony is that even though it is all around us, we can't see it unless we expect to see it. We cannot fully experience it unless we choose to live it first and trust in the promise. For with resurrection, the promise is the reality, and the reality is right in front of us. So each time we tell this story, each time we live it and sing it out and let it settle deep in our bones, we can see it more clearly. And once we do see it, we will no longer be afraid. Death and fear and hate will have no hold on us because we can see beyond that empty tomb. For the story has not ended there, friends. It cannot. The power of God's love and life is forever at work when we have eyes to see and hearts to love and hands to reach out to each other. And so we tell this story again and again, even when the world still feels rather cold and dark, and fear seems stronger than love, and war feels stronger than peace, and Easter comes way too early for us to be ready, because that's exactly when we need to hear it most. For in all places, and in all times, and in all people, Christ is risen.
Christ is risen indeed.
May it be so today and forever. Amen.